Good morning, Warzone kids. It is -3 degrees on the trail to the Western Lands on the Vermont section this morning. Burr, that's straight up cold. I've been living in Vermont for 20 years. I grew up in Oklahoma, and it would occasionally get in the single digits in Oklahoma, and we hardly ever got anything that would really count as snow. We did get freezing rain there, which is much harder to deal with than snow. But living in Vermont here, I've had to recalibrate my concept of cold. And so straight up, the word cold, I reserve for below zero, because you want some way to really whine about it. And so I don't break out the word cold, which is my whining word, till it's below zero. So it's cold this morning, Pilgrim. That's all right. I'm not walking down the highway. I'm riding in my truck, and the roads are clear enough, and it's warm in here. So it really doesn't matter to me if it's 120 degrees outside or -3. It's about 75 in here, and I'm comfortable. That's my story for the day. Rosy Finger Dawn is coming up over the horizon. And I've been thinking about Sappho stones. Sappho. The original lesbian. She was a poet, a Greek poet, lived on the island of Lesbos, where the lesbians lived. And probably in like the 6th century BC, maybe the 5th century BC, but I think the 6th century BC. It doesn't matter. And she wrote poems, most of what we have are fragments. And she's got a beautiful fragment that has stuck in my mind for a long, long time, since I was a kid. If you're squeamish, don't turn over the rocks on the beach. If you're squeamish, don't turn over the rocks on the beach. Why not? Because what's going to be under the rocks? Bugs. Bugs and damp, dark, oozy mud. That's what's going to be under rocks. And if you're squeamish and you don't want to see bugs and damp, dark, oozy, smelly mud, don't turn the rocks over. That's good advice, literally. But it's also good advice on the trail to the Western Lands, because Sappho stones is the next hurdle that my pilgrims run into in my book, A Pilgrim's Progress, Letters from the Trail to the Western Lands. And it's a book proposal I'm trying to sell, and if you're an agent, I think you ought to represent me. And if you're a publisher, I hope you buy the book. It's me sharing my experience of what it's like for me to learn and become who I am as I head to a place of peace and wholeness. That's what I call the Western Lands. And I'm a Warzone kid. I'm a child sex abuse survivor. As an adult, I live with borderline personality disorder. I'm a recovering addict and bulimic. And a Warzone kids, that's just my term for those of us whose childhoods was more like a guerrilla war against our psyche and our soul and our self. We are human beings. We have a psyche. We have a soul. Warzone kids is just my term for those of us whose childhoods was more like a low-grade guerrilla war against our psyche than a supportive environment. I'm a child sex abuse survivor, and that might have been your war zone too. I was also caused a lot of emotional harm, psychological harm as a child, and that may be your experience. Maybe you had a lot of physical abuse and physical harm. Maybe you had societal harm. You were the wrong race or gender for where you lived. I mean, other people thought you were the wrong one. You're the right one, whatever you are. Maybe you grew up in a literal war zone. My favorite fighter in UFC, which is my favorite sport, my favorite fighter is Khamzat Chimaev, and he's a Chechen war zone kid, literally a war zone kid. He was born in the 90s in Chechnya, and there's a guerrilla war going on there between the Chechens and the Soviet Union. Russia, after the fall of the Soviet Union. He's a literal war zone kid. So In my book, A Pilgrim's Progress, Letters from the Trail to the Western Lands, I got a couple characters, pilgrims. They write letters back and forth. Both of these characters are parts of me, write letters to myself. And I want to share that experience with you, because that's really all we can do. My answers might not work for you, your answers might not work for me, but I'm a volunteer circle keeper for an organization called Hidden Water Circle, and they run healing circles, they facilitate healing circles by and for those affected by child sex abuse. Registration is open right now for the February season. If you're a child sex abuse survivor, or you're the partner of a child sex abuse survivor, or you are a non-offending, non-abusing parent of a child sex abuse survivor, or if you yourself have caused harm, have caused sexual harm to children, and you are ready to take responsibility for that and start your own trail to the Western Lands, they have circles for each of you. They got green circles, blue circles, orange circles, and purple circles for those different groups I just mentioned. If you're affected by child sex abuse, go to Hidden Water Circle and get on the list. I'll put a link in the description of this video. It's a great organization, and as a circle keeper in there, that just means I help facilitate the circle. I'm one of the child sex abuse survivors. I'm one of 8 in the circle. And what I've seen in there, my experience in there, has been that the thing we can do that does more than anything else to move us along our own trail to the Western Lands is share our experience with others, share our experience in order to be understood, and listen to others in order to understand their experience. I'm a 51-year-old Gen Xer man from Oklahoma. I come from a very specific time and place in our country. When I share my experience with others and I listen to understand their experience, it doesn't matter what gender, sex, race, or creed they are, or age. I can see myself in them, and they can see themselves in me. And I know that I'm not alone. And I know that I'm not alone right now because you're watching this, and thank you for it. Leave a comment and repost this video if you like it. And come to my channel, A Trail to the Western Lands on YouTube. I put all these videos in order. I got names for them. And I really appreciate the engagement. So leave a comment if you hear anything in here you like. I'd love to hear from you. Now, in my book I'm working on, I got the first draft done. I'm sending out query letters. The Pilgrim's Progress. The pilgrims, it's like the inward journey toward peace and wholeness turned into an external pilgrimage. And my pilgrims come across obstacles that reflect the obstacles in our hearts. They come across the Grail Forest where you get lost and you have to find your own way out. Sound familiar, pilgrim? Ever been lost in life and have to find your way out? They find their way through the Canyon of the Furies, where their demons chase them and call them into Magar's stronghold, which is a place that you run. I'm an addict and bulimic, and whenever my demons in my past, a lot of my life has been defined by trying to shut up the demons in my head, trying to get those voices to quiet down. And the things I've done that made me feel safe, my Magar stronghold, that's a image from Game of Thrones when Jaime and Cersei ran to each other and they ran in Magar's stronghold. And they ran there and they died, but they thought they were running in there to find each other. When I live in addiction or bulimia or trying to fill my mind with work or learning things, I'm a cerebral guy, I like to learn things, and that's great unless I'm learning things in order to quiet the demons. If I'm doing anything at all in my life to quiet my demons down, that's me running into Magar's stronghold. That's me avoiding my life. And for us Warzone kids, for me, my experience of life as a Warzone kid is that peace and wholeness for me is found in the present moment and living my life right here in the here and now. Not getting caught up being an old woodcutter, trying to chisel the past, trying to whittle on the log of the past that I drag around with me. And not being a young hunter, trying to find happiness around the next corner. Because guess what, pilgrim? If you're trying to find happiness and peace of mind right around the next corner, that's where you're always going to be looking, is right around the next corner. And you're always going to think that whatever your life is like right now, it's going to be a little bit better around the next corner. Your life is right here and now. My life is right here and now in this truck, -3 degrees with the rosy fingered dawn poking her face up over the mountains over there. So our pilgrims have just escaped Magar's stronghold. And the only way to escape Magar's stronghold is to run right in the mouth of the demons that are blocking the entrance. There's only one way in and one way out, and that's through your own life. You got to walk right up to the demons blocking that cave, and you got to put your head in your mouth. Freudian slip. You got to put your head in their mouth, and then what you'll find, what I found, is that the demons don't eat me. I eat the demons, because those demons are part of me. They're a part of me that's calling to myself. And when I face them and love those demons and accept them just however they are, they become part of me again. And the power of my heart, the power of my life force that was in those demons is back inside of me, and it becomes part of my life force again. If you're a child sex abuse survivor, you had a Warzone childhood, you may find that your experience is that you've been separated from yourself. You've been alienated from yourself. And those demons are part of yourself that wants to get back together with you. That's my experience. And so after our pilgrims leave Magar's stronghold, the next hurdle they come to are Sappho stones. This one's mostly going to be an introduction to it because I'm 11 minutes in, and all I've done is set the table for Sappho stones, but that's all right. We got nowhere to go, pilgrim, except right here where we are. However long it takes to tell a story is how long it takes to tell that story. Sappho stones. If you're squeamish, don't turn over rocks on the beach. Well, think of that as a metaphor. Think of the rocks on the beach as rocks, stones in your mind, parts of yourself that you're afraid of. The Sappho stones of your heart, your mind, your psyche, your soul, who you are. The parts of yourself that you don't want to think about. The parts of yourself that you think, if I ever look in there, I'll start crying and I'll never stop. Like I said, I'm a 51-year-old Gen Xer from Oklahoma. I was raised by a 3-tour door gunner from Vietnam with a certain set of values around fortitude and not bawling like a baby. And I spent years of my childhood trying to be like Spock. Sorry for the shaky camera. I spent years of my childhood trying to be like Spock. Me sitting down bawling is definitely something that happens these days, but it doesn't happen that much, and usually over something I'm sentimentally happy about more than sad. But I definitely have stones in my mind that I have stayed away from in my life. I don't want to think about that. You have stones in your mind, pilgrim, that you don't want to think about, but you know they're there. You know those stones are there. Some of them anyway. We have a lot of stones in our mind that are so big and dark and black that we can't even see them yet. Don't worry about them. You can't because you can't see them. But you got little stones in your mind. I'll give you an example. We've all had this experience where you got a memory that turns out not to be right. You remember something one way, and then maybe you have a disagreement with someone, it's over, whatever was over, and you remember it one way, and then you talk to that person, and they remember it a different way, and in your mind, you realize that you're wrong, your memory of it's wrong, and their memory of it's right, but you don't want to think about it because your pride, your ego gets in the way, you don't want to admit because you felt real happy about being right, you felt real self-righteous about being right, in that argument, in that fight. And that's a sticky feeling. Self-righteousness and being right, that's a real sticky feeling in the mind. And so you might not even think about that disagreement anymore, because if you think about it, you're going to have to think about the fact that you were wrong. And instead of being self-righteous, you're just kind of a clown. That's like a Sappho stone, right? Well, you're allowed to be wrong, and you're allowed to be a clown, and you're allowed to be ridiculous. Turn over the stone, because hiding from those stones in your mind doesn't help. Does that make any sense, Pilgrim? Turn over that stone. It's all right. I'll give you a real example from my life. It's kind of a big stone. It was a big stone for me at the time. I live with borderline personality disorder, right? And if you read up on that, you're going to read up on things like splitting, where someone goes from good to bad in your mind. You're going to read about wild impulsivity of emotions, pendulum swing, hate to love, black to white, very little in the middle. That's me, all over. And I remember an experience with the person I was going out with where I thought one thing had happened. I thought I'd been betrayed. And I thought this person had done me wrong. And I split, to use BPD language. I completely split. My amygdala, the part of my brain, that's just what I call it. I don't even know if that's the right term. But the part of my mind that's attached to someone just came undone, unhooked. Like, how trains, like the locomotive of a train hooks on to those railroad cars behind it and pulls them along the road? Mine just came unhooked. I was gone. I was out. Split. And if you have anyone with borderline in your life, or you have borderline, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. I split and I was gone in my mind. And then I came back down to earth. I came back down to reality, and I thought about it some more, and I realized that the thing I thought had been a betrayal wasn't. Not at all. Not even a little bit. Now, there were real things in that relationship that led me to do the splitting, if that makes sense. But I hadn't been betrayed. And it was really hard for me, Pilgrim. It was real hard for me to turn over that stone and to see what it really was. And to see, oh, I hurt that person. I caused that person pain because I split on them. And I didn't really go back. I split on them in my mind, and I caused them a lot of pain over something that wasn't even real. That's not easy for me to think about, Pilgrim. And if I don't think about it, if I leave that stone where it is, if I'm squeamish about turning over that stone in my mind, you know what that's going to do for me, Pilgrim? That's going to make it far more likely that I do exactly the same thing again. That's going to make it far more likely that I repeat that dynamic again. But if I turn over that stone, if I'm not squeamish, if I turn over that stone in my mind and look at those bugs and that smelly, slimy dirt, that was me feeling betrayed and self-righteous. It's happened again. I've been betrayed. I live with borderline personality disorder, and I can tell you, if I wrote down a list of people that I felt close to in my life, romantically, I'll just leave it at that, then that would also be a list of people who have betrayed me in my mind. They have let me down in my mind. I have split on them in my mind. All of those experiences were very painful to me, and I don't like to think about them. Because if I think about them, if I turn over that rock, I got to see a lot of things I don't want to see. Like all those experiences were me causing a lot of pain to people who cared about me. Yeah. If you've got borderline, or you live with someone with borderline, or you know someone with borderline, see if this doesn't sound familiar to you. I didn't want to think about that stuff because I did not want to face the fact that all those times I'd been betrayed were really times that I'd just been living in my own conditioning, believing the thoughts in my mind, believing that I've been betrayed, and the feeling that I've been betrayed gives me the right to cause harm, because what does a betrayer deserve? They deserve to be cast out to the far side of the moon. They deserve to be cast out of my love. Well, you know what's under that Sappho stone, Pilgrim? My childhood. Hey, you know what I see in that childhood is a mother who I think suffered from the same conditioning. And a mother who, when she was upset at me, cast me out to the outer darkness of cold, icy banishment. And no matter how hard I crawled back, no matter how humiliatingly and shamingly I begged for her love and approval, she left me out there in the cold dark. And that's how my psyche developed. That was a big part of my war zone. And for me to turn over that stone in my mind, Pilgrim, that's for me to take a good long look at the fact that I myself have doled out that same treatment to other people. I have cast them out into the outer darkness. I've treated my affection and my approval and my love like a lighthouse. When people made me happy, I would shine my light on them. And then when they made me unhappy, that light would just swing around and point in some other direction. And I would leave them out at sea with no light, no love, no affection, no approval. And I would cause them exactly the same kind of harm that I was caused as a child. That is smelly, dark, oozy mud, Pilgrim. And that is what's under the Sappho stones. That is what is under some of the Sappho stones in my mind. It does not smell good. I do not love dark, black, sticky, oozy, smelly mud. But the choice, Pilgrim, is do I want to spend the rest of my life until I am dead living in that dynamic? Think of the price I've made people pay for caring about me. I think of the price I have paid for making people, I think of the price I have made people pay for caring about me. Because what that's meant for them is I've cast them out into the outer darkness like a comet made of black, dark ice and stone, chunks of it breaking off. There's an image for you. Chunks of that comet of my psyche breaking off, causing harm to other people in the same way that harm was caused to me. I can tell you this. It's been a while since I've done that to anyone. And it's been a while since I put myself in the position to do that to another person. And I'm far less likely to do that to other people, to inflict that kind of harm and pain on other people in the future, because I've turned over those Sappho stones in my mind, and I've seen the things in my mind that I didn't want to see. But my experience, that's my experience of that, Pilgrim. That's my experience of Sappho stones. And this is just part one. I'll continue it on. But I hope that makes some sense to you, Pilgrim, the idea of Sappho stones in your mind. If you're squeamish, don't turn over rocks. But if you make that choice not to turn over those rocks, you're going to trip over them again and again. Sometimes to make it on down the trail to the Western lands, you have to turn over those rocks to get them out of your way. And there ain't really nothing wrong with those bugs that live under rocks, is there? Those bugs have a job to do. Those bugs are creatures in the cosmos, same as you and I. And I don't shoot second arrows of judgment at myself for that anymore. That is the psyche that I have. I'm a Warzone kid. I live with a psyche like that. And being aware of it, I can say, okay, that's how I am. There's no reason for me to be a different way or have a different psyche. If I understand that I'm an adult living with that psyche, I can live with it in the here and now. And I don't have to live out that conditioning and cause other people harm. That's what's on my mind this morning, Pilgrim. I'll continue this on as part two. But rosy-fingered dawn is up, the skies are clear, and the roads are clear. and it's up to 0 outside. We can get in a lot of miles today. Put on your warm socks, put some toe warmers in them boots, get your gloves on, get your hat on, and let's walk some miles today, Pilgrim. Let's walk them together. We got a lot to talk about. Let's get a move on.